is just a list of shit that's not going to happen. The truth of a person and their character expressed in those peak moments. You've got to test yourself. You've got to crash yourself across the crucible of building something from nothing. You'll learn who you are, you'll learn what you're capable of, and you'll learn how to be more.
Welcome to the next episode of Entrepreneurial Excellence. It's great to have Jordan Ritter here with me today. He's actually also a 6-time founder. He's been CTO of a number of companies on top of it. And one of the big ones that people might have heard of, although it's a long time ago now, but truly changed the game, he was also the co-founder of Napster. So Jordan, it is fantastic to have you today. I know you have a million things on your plate, which is actually part of what we want to talk about. How do you get through all of it as a founder? So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
So Jordan, why don't we just kick it off and start with sort of like, just what is your definition of an excellent entrepreneur? What is that person? What does he or she look like? And how do you try to personally be that person, presumably to get a great return for your team and investors and everyone else who believes in you?
I don't think there is such a thing. I think I'll use an analogy. I think we talk about, at least I talk about the cultures I build, the great software engineer, capital G, capital S, capital E. They make the best decisions in the shortest period of time. They write the best code. They never make mistakes. It's a mythical creature, doesn't exist, but it's a standard we strive for. I think the ideal excellent entrepreneur is a similar kind of mythical thing. You have to be good at so many different things. And some people often will mistake the phrase entrepreneur for CEO. And there are many different stages and types of CEOs too. So it's also a good analogy. I don't think there is one definition of what makes you a great entrepreneur. It depends on what you're building. It depends on what you're selling. It depends on what market you're in. Like there's a bunch of different standards and measures for that.
So is that the definition then to some extent, just to keep pushing there? Like in other words, is a great entrepreneur the one who is a little bit of a chameleon and can figure out what they need to be at the right time for that specific company?
I mean, I guess you could say that. I think there are definitely attributes and what I would consider values that make you a better entrepreneur or a better startup person or whatever than others. Adaptability is one of them, right? The ability to change your plan. So someone, once funnily told me that a plan is just a list of shit that's not going to happen.
Yep.
The skill is in, meeting with the on the ground reality and making different choices and decisions that ideally are right to get to the intended destination. So yeah, I think so. I think it's your ability to morph into different things. I really don't think, there are certainly examples in the market of people who were at the earliest stage as the entrepreneur, the CEO or whatever, who are now there in a public company. I think their journeys to get there involved a lot of other people supporting them, filling in the roles that they were not capable of. I do not think one person can do it all. There's just too many different eras. There's too many different millennia that occur in the growth of a company, between the earliest stages of hunting around in the dark and experimentalism and trying to find new things to holy shit, don't touch anything. It's stability and scale time. Like we need to take this to market to, how does a roadshow look like for an IPO? What does it look like to talk to investment bankers? And in between, like go to market strategy, like, do you understand how to take products to market or services to market? And do you know how to bring together the people at each one of those stages that ultimately, because it's a team sport, execute on that whole thing? It's just too much. I certainly try. And so I have the mythical beast in my mind of what it is to be that. And I strive every day to be a better version of myself. But there's definitely, it's not, anyone who tells you that they were the best leader, the best entrepreneur, best CEO at every possible stage of their business is lying, just by default.
They probably aren't actually. If they're making that claim, then they don't have the right level of humility to learn and understand it. What do you think, if you think through some of the quote unquote best entrepreneurs out there, right? You have like the folks like an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, or kind of the sort of famous folks you might think of. And maybe they're only famous because they've not only built great companies and big companies, but because they're sort of in the news in different ways. But like, what are the qualities that you look at when you think through a lot of these folks that have been the most successful? And I'm sure, by the way, there's hundreds of others you've met in your career who also have had amazing exits and outcomes, who maybe aren't well known. Are there qualities for them that you're like, hey, like these are things they've done really well that I can learn from?
I'll first comment on the big names, and then I'll share a story that I think is really telling about how I feel about people and what their skill sets are. So I think Elon Musk, if I could be a little crude for a second, is just a dick. I think he is brilliant and he's smart and he sees the future, and he's been fortunate to have the money to bring together the people that ultimately execute on those ideas. But getting to Mars, he wasn't the first person to think of that. Electric cars, he wasn't the first person to think of that. And like, but I think he's been great at raising money and bringing people together. I think, you see him buy Twitter, which was a huge mistake in my opinion, and what it's become since then. Terrible. I do not put him on the list of great entrepreneurs. I just don't. You could say he's a billionaire, and if your measure is money, then sure. You can't deny billions of dollars, but being the richest man in the world. But I just don't think that's the measure of what makes a great entrepreneur.
So I mean, I would keep going down like what for these other entrepreneurs, but it's a really good point and one that I actually ask a lot of people. How do you measure excellence? Like what, like in our capitalist society, there's a good argument that excellence is measured by the financial money that you've accumulated, because that's how you measure success at capitalism. And theoretically, Elon Musk, as a great example, wouldn't be where he's at if people didn't love his cars and his rockets didn't change the way the world works. Now, Twitter was a way to lose a lot of money, but certainly with cars and rockets, there are reasons why those businesses are as highly valued as they are, because he presumably helped create something that was so differentiated and so valuable.
What was the skill set that created that? And can you attribute all of that to him? I don't want to make this about Elon, but I think it's probably a good instructive example. He brought together the right people and he brought together money, and he had vision and some strategy. Did he invent the technology that make those companies work? No. Did he oversee their construction of their teams, of their infrastructure, of the day-to-day operations of that is what I think lands on the list of what makes you a great entrepreneur, is your ability day to day to see the hard things and make the hard choices and persevere towards the destination? No, I don't think so. A lot of those companies already existed before he came into the picture. As I understand it, he did not found Tesla. The two other guys founded Tesla, and he has a great operations team there. He has a great leadership team there. Can you attribute credit for creating that to him? Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's lots of reasons why you can attract talent. Sometimes money is a great way to do that. But can you credit him with the success of that company? No, I credit his team. Every good CEO knows, every good one knows innately that success is your team's and failure is yours, right? It's not you. It's everybody else that makes the vision a reality. Are you a component of that? Yes, it's a team sport. Do you own all of it? Fuck no. Everybody else who worked the long hours, the late hours, who compromised their lives, who managed, having kids at the same time, who forewent the vacations that would have kept them balanced in their lives. Everybody who suffered and stressed and went through the pain, it's their credit. Why is Tesla great? Because of the people that work at Tesla. Why is SpaceX great? Because of the people that work at SpaceX. I do not give him credit for all of that. I give him credit for pieces of it that set those things up, but I absolutely don't give him credit for that, because I think he's actually a shitty entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You're right. He made a ton of money. You can't deny that. But would I ever want to work for him? No.
Yep, totally. Although, but also, I think there are probably a lot of people who would, in the sense that, like, if you want to go, he sets a really visionary perspective, and I think that's where arguably, right, good founders come.
He doesn't own a monopoly on it either.
Correct. So walk me through kind of the other founders you're thinking about, some of these big name ones, but also other ones. Like, what does that look like? What are the things that they're doing? Are they setting, sort of like Elon did? Or like, are they setting the foundational elements? Are they just great recruiters to build that team and hire and identify talent? What is it, that skill set that differentiates?
Yeah. Let's orient on the earlier stages of a company, because I think those are the ones that are probably a lot of the entrepreneurial, the people interested in the journey need to understand that part the most. The other side of it, once you've achieved momentum and you've achieved success, like, can you keep it, is a different kind of skill set. Look, I've done this a long time. I've learned from a lot of people. I've learned from people who have worked for me. I've learned from people that I hired over me. I love to tell a story. I won't mention his name. I will start by saying I am forever grateful to him. I learned more from him as a CEO than I have learned from anyone else ever in my entire career.
Wow.
And yet we ended up firing him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, there's a story there, some of which is personal, but at the end of the day, the way CEOs get sent off is they make bad decisions and you got to be accountable for them. Remember, failure is yours. Success is everyone else's, but failure is yours. And it's a shitty job. It's actually one of the worst jobs you can have in a company, is to be the CEO, in my opinion. But, that was the consequence. But what I learned from him, what I watched him do, first of all, kind of speaking to the skill sets, he was great at raising money. And anyone who's familiar with the dogma of building companies will tell you that that's 1/3 of your job, is keeping the company capitalized and solvent. It's hard. It sucks. It's the shittiest part of the job, because back when I used to do this in the earliest days, there was 50 VCs you wanted to talk to. Now there's 500 plus. You're having a lot of conversations and most of them are no. And most of them are no for confusing or not obvious reasons. And so the next thing is resilience. And I find it's like a trite thing to say, you have to be resilient, but the surface area of resilience is profound. And so, watching how other people have operated through the hardship of being told no all the time, being told you don't understand, or not being told anything, just being ghosted, which is a thing these days that didn't used to happen in the past. All of that kind of wears you down. And so resilience, fortitude, I know people throw around the word grit, but like you have to be able to take a punch and get right back up, and take another punch and get right back up. I think there's a lot of things, that make success in the early stage of the company, and I don't attribute it all to the entrepreneur. I attribute it to the team, the core kernel of an A team that is the seed of every company, because it's never one person. But the skill set involved in bringing together a core kernel of A team absolutely is specific. Can I sell? Can I pitch? Right? It's all sales. Can I sell you on investing in the company? Can I sell them on joining the company? Can I sell them on working for me? Can I sell them on having me work for them? Whatever that looks like, it's all sales. So while you're getting punched in the face, you got to have a smile, be able to say, hey, I think this is something you should do. You should get punched in the face with me. It'd be great.
Yeah. And convincing people that is an amazing skill to have. And it's also, especially because, like, look, they need to come and take that risk with you. And sometimes it's always not the best choice, right? I think for a lot of people, it might not be. At the same time, it's one heck of a journey to be part of that, even if you're not the founder.
The reason to do startups used to be, take a bet on yourself. You can go to some big company, make some money, or you can come here, take a bet on yourself, own whatever it is you do, and it's for the glory and eventually a large financial outcome. And there's lots of risk in that, right? But then Fang came in and screwed up the whole market, and now everybody's making $500 to $1 million in total comp a year, just parked, not living their best lives in terms of professional careers, probably living their best lives in terms of personal. Meanwhile, the rest of us slave away. So now all you really have to offer is autonomy, ownership, and glory. Definitely a financial outcome if you win on the other side of it. But those are really the only real ways you attract people into companies now. I go back to the recruiting thing. It's like, you want to build a company from scratch. You want to come in later and hire people in. It's the same skill set. You have to be really good at understanding what the other person wants and needs and matching them up to it. Now, there's a whole other layer to this that I talk about a lot, which is what makes a great team versus a good team. Because, good team, average team, mediocre team, they'll take the next Facebook and fuck it up 100% of the time. But a great team will take a crappy idea and turn it around into something. Right? A lot of people don't know that Slack wasn't Slack when it first started.
It was a gaming company. It was gaming, right?
Gaming company. And they had this little thing that they built on the side for them. That was Slack. It turned into Slack. That's a great team. That's the story of a great team and how they become, how they're able to turn something around into something meaningful. So you have to be able to attract great teams, and it's especially hard to do. But usually, if you're bringing someone in the earliest stages, it is for the glory. It is for the value alignment. It is for the mission. Culture is the thing that makes teams great. I listen to how recruiting is done throughout my entire career. People pitch it. People talk about it. It's about skills. It's about matching skills. It's about matching mission. They're all wrong. They're all wrong. Let me tell you, you're all fucking wrong.
Tell me why. Why are they wrong? So which are they focused on?
Culture is first. I call it the 3 C's: culture, capacity, and craft.
Okay.
The number one thing that makes a great team is, will they suffer together? Will they carry each other on their down days? Will they celebrate together on their up days? It's about values and mindset and principles and ethos. It's about common traits. As a community, do we all love being together? Because Otherwise, it's already a hard experience. You're going to have a miserable fucking time. But the thing that makes you great is the thing that connects us. And it tends to be the reason we go extra. Sure, you could pay us an extra bonus and that'll be a temporary thing that will get us to do a little bit more, but that isn't permanent and that isn't forever. If I believe in you and you believe in me and we believe in us and this thing that we're doing together, that's all the cultural fabric. And that you achieve that at the lower level, like what are the values that we believe in? What are the things that we mutually don't agree with? All of that collectively as culture is the most important thing. And so whenever I build a company, I teach interviewing to focus on that first. We do skills last. So culture, capacity is short for capacity for mastery. In other frames, it's sometimes called velocity of learning, but I still think you can learn fast and not master anything. So it's both. It's your ability to meet the unknown and incorporate that quickly and master it. Because if you're doing startup, you're building something new in the world, you tend to be doing something that's never been done before. And so what you've already seen, not really that helpful. Your ability to see the unseen and critically think about what that might map to and what solutions to try in order to solve any particular problem, that is the skill set. That may be a skill in and of itself, but it's not, I know Python, or I've managed P&Ls of this size. It's like, have I seen the unknown and have I figured it out? So if I have a really strong team bond and I have a really powerful capacity for mastery, you can get the third thing called skills that we call craft, because 3 C's sounds better.
3 C's for sure.
Yeah. So that to me, again, in the skill set of an entrepreneur and what it takes to be successful is knowing how to bring together the great team. Because I have learned that it is the most valuable resource you build in a startup. It is not the tech, it's not the product, it's not even the business, it's the team. They will figure out whatever needs to be figured out. So my number one focus in the earliest stages is people. Number one. Number 1.1 in terms of priority is money raising. But like with a great team at the earliest stages, you make a better case for the potential success of a business and therefore have better chances raising money. So it's always about people first for me.
How much time do you spend recruiting, building that early team? Like, what is a heuristic when you're like, okay, at the earliest stages, however you want to define that, I spend X% of my time on recruiting?
If you're doing it right, I'll give you a kind of a measure here. It takes 3 months to find a great engineer. It takes 6 months to find a great executive, and it takes 9 months to raise a round of financing. Sounds trite. It's been true since 99. It was true this time around. It's just math. So if you're doing it right, and I said use the word great specifically, if you're doing it right, it's going to take you a while. So about a third of my time across the board, sometimes 50%, sometimes 25%, but usually a third. Because it's not, I need a back engineer, I need a front engineer, I need a web dev, done. No, the team that I'm building, yeah, definitely. Like if I need somebody to do web, they got to be able to do web. But like I'm looking for the team fit first. And that, if you're deliberate about it, takes a lot more time. And you just don't find them quickly.
And then what are you doing to like interview properly for that? Are there questions you like to ask? Are there things you like to do? What are the secrets of these companies you've learned to like hire culturally for the proper cultural fit in 3Cs?
Yeah. It's what I call the narrative arc interview. So the very first interview, and I've taught this in my last 2 companies, should be what we call a narrative arc interview or a white space interview. If I have your resume in front of me, I will ask you about the white space in between the things on it. Because the truth of a person and their character is expressed in those peak moments, the top 5% and the bottom 5% of their lives. And transitions are those. And even the things not on the resume, how I got to my first job on my resume. I'll always start out the interview usually with, what did you want to be when you were little? And I'm telling you, like not even 9 times out of 10, but maybe like 95 times out of 100, there is a direct correlation to an ambition or what they were exposed to environmentally or by people that, they were around, a direct correlation to who they are today. I've had experiences with people running this type of interview where I arrive at a conclusion of who they are and I tell them that in real time at the end of the interview and they go, holy shit, I never thought about that. I think you're right. Right? Like, but what is it really? We call it a narrative arc interview because we start very early and then paint me a picture of how we got here. I don't care about the average experience. I don't care about the achievements. I care about the peak experiences. And usually moving between jobs is peak experience. Like there's a reason I left. There's a reason why I got attracted to something else. If they're a great team member versus a good team member, they will naturally effervesce with what they're excited about at those moments in their lives. And that applies to the introverts as well as the extroverts. They'll just fucking light up if you're doing it. And the other really important part of this style is that you're doing it with them. You reciprocate every question, because the truth is, what you're really doing is seeing how easy it is to build rapport. It's a felt experience. And what I tell people at the very beginning of the interview is, listen, our brains, been around for 10,000 years. We understand a lot, but this thing down here, it's been around 100,000 years. Our limbic system, what we call our gut, whatever, when it says run, we fucking run. We don't question it. Sometimes if our brain tells us to run, we're like, why does that happen? Maybe you die. But like if your gut tells you to run. So what is the skill? Elevate to the level of conscious awareness what you're feeling. So I want you to just surrender to this experience where we're going to share our lives with each other, see how easy that goes or not, learn a lot about each other. That way you're going to build trust in who I am and I'm going to build trust in who you are. But the frame is, it's a fuck yes or it's a no.
Yep. And okay, so bunch of questions there. So one, just to make sure I really understand, when you're saying, hey, I'm going to ask you about the peaks and valleys of your career. Like, okay, you left this, you left this job, you did this thing like that, and you're going to see where they get excited, where they get is sad, things like that. And you will do the same thing. Like, oh, in my last startup, I went through that. I felt that same way. I went through that. Okay.
100%. It's about finding common ground and then sharing experiences. I did a ton of personal development work in my 30s, and I bring in what I think are positive elements of that into the work environment, because at the end of the day, it's a pressure cooker. We're all under stress and pressure. There's a lot of tools and techniques you learn in those contexts that can be useful interpersonally when you're working with and for and over other people who are in a similar experience. I try to bring those things in, and it's all about empathy, understanding, rapport, connecting, that sort of bag of stuff that ultimately maps to what makes a great team. Is if you have that, oh my God, the things that you can achieve. You need a little bit more than that, but that's the main thing. And so the nature of this interview is really to kind of tease that out. Like, and you're asking like, what questions do you ask? If you do this, you ask. That's definitely a way to approach it, and it's not wrong. But the reason why I say it's a fuck yes or it's a no is because we often find ourselves in this trap of, that's really compelling, 90%. That could be good, 80%. Maybe 70%. Who the fuck knows what the difference is between 90, 80, and 70%? The only thing we really know is, fuck yes, this is amazing, or not. And what we need are people who feel that fuck yes the same way we want to feel about them. So we arrive at the end of this journey. This takes an hour basically to share our stories with each other, to understand the peaks and valleys. And I'll give you some techniques about that in a second. But the real truth of it is, elevate the level of conscious awareness what you feel at the end. Does this feel right? Trust that. You can get in your head about it, and you should eventually, was the comp, was this, was that. But at the end of the day, like, what makes a great team is, this feels right. I will fight for you. I will stand next to you. You will fight for me. You will stand next to me. We will carry each other on our down days. We'll celebrate together on our up days. Like, it's that kind of ethos around principles and values and mindset. Meanwhile, you as the interviewer in the background, what the company values are, what the principles, mindset, and ethos are, what the traits are of people that you're looking for. You're evaluating that in them. And presumably you're expressing those things in what you're saying. So they're able to evaluate who you are and what the culture looks like by virtue of that. So a lot of really sophisticated things come out of this just by telling a narrative arc story about ourselves with an eye towards what it feels and elevating a level of conscious awareness. Now, it isn't just about what happened when you left this job. I'll give you an example. I will say things like, well, first of all, I'll actively listen for things that sound like there's some complexity underneath the hood. Like, I had this internship at this and I went to that. Probably not going to ask about it. You're like, oh, that's interesting. So I might ask, why did you choose that internship, to kind of get a sense of the output. I won't focus on that. But if like I see, 4 years or 5 years at a company, maybe 3 years at a company, which means they left before they vested out, because that's standard 4-year vesting is usually a proper assumption. Then I'll say something like, the last day of your job, put me in your shoes. Look left, look right. Tell me what you see around you, and tell me what's going on in your head.
I love that.
And then, and they'll either not tell you anything, which tells you already there's a block and this isn't going to be a fit, or they will kind of expound, and you'll get to learn about how well they self-reflect, and how well they communicate and how easily vulnerable they can become. And, I'm using the word vulnerability loosely, but we all feel protective about certain aspects of our experiences in life. And so there's so much richness that comes out of this. But then ultimately you'll find these really crazy stories like that's something they would never tell you. And certainly the resume would never say, like, well, the CEO fucking lost his mind and da 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 da, and said something that really set the company on another path. And I was like, it is not worth it. And you're like, oh, interesting. So this is how you make decisions. This is how you make choices. This is what you're impacted by. This is what you care about. You get all this complexity. Okay, well, what did you do then? And maybe they took a sabbatical, or maybe they stayed at their job while they looked for another thing. You learn this richness in the transition moments. You can find peaks and valleys inside of work, and you have to listen actively for them. But I'm always very specific with people, telling them I don't care about the average experience. I care about the great things and the terrible things, because that is where the truth of our character comes out. And that is where we both can exchange information on very rapidly and very deeply to understand whether this is going to be a great team or not from a culture standpoint.
And is the right hire, certainly for your companies, but would you say for other companies, a person who can be more vulnerable, who can be more transparent and open about those peaks and valleys? What are the things you're looking for them to say and do and expound upon that are highlights?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm always learning. I'm still modifying these beliefs and these dogmas. I would generally say that in the earliest stages, you all need to be aligned. In the later stages, it becomes more functional and more transactional. I will say there was one time I was wrong. Again, I won't name a name, but he was a COO of mine, and he was profoundly amazing. Uh, he used to tell a joke. I'll tell you the joke. If he watches this, he'll know I'm talking about him. It's fine. He would say he went to boarding school, I think in Scotland or in the British Isles somewhere, and he'd say, "Man, it used to get so cold out there. We used to all sit around a candle for warmth, and when it got really cold, we'd light it."
I mean, that's a pretty funny joke. Okay.
It's funny, but like this is like okay. That's not a vulnerable thing to say. That's like you're making fun of a hardship, and there's a different mindset towards that. Also, an ideal character trait for doing startups where you have to endure and persevere, and we connected on values. We connected on what was important, but the vulnerability thing was always a struggle for him. And I think it's a struggle for not just him, but for a lot of people, right? To this day, I think he was the best COO I'd ever had, and I still adore him and respect him and appreciate him. But I recognize that we weren't always on the same plane there, because we had a very different life experiences, or in some ways similar life experiences, but we concluded different things from those. Some of us didn't heal, but we made the best of it. We're still great people who you can work with and contribute. So there's an example of like, you know, I took him through a narrative arc interview and he did pretty well. But I would say in the whole, he's like, shut up and do your job kind of guy, which there's a time and place for that. It's not wrong. And there are places where that deep vulnerability, especially at scale, don't serve you.
Do you think, once again, like, would you say to other founders, hey, look for these vulnerable people, especially in the earliest stages, because you need that for the culture building, or is that
No,
unique to Jordan's companies?
it's not about being vulnerable. It's about watching and observing how easily vulnerable someone becomes when you start building rapport with them. It's not about them being vulnerable. It's like it's again, how do I arrive at it? Like, this is a fuck yes thing. Is like, man, that was easy. Man, that conversation just flowed. Man, I just learned so much about you. Man, I just told you so much about myself. Shit, I just learned things about myself I didn't even appreciate or know. Like, vulnerability had to take place for those conclusions to happen. But it wasn't the act of being vulnerable is the thing to look for. It was the let's build rapport around our mutual life stories, or see how easy it is, and then arrive at the end of it going, yeah, no, that fucking makes sense. Like, we could be friends. Let's be compatriots. Let's be colleagues. But like, can we be friends and really like, because at the end of the day, like, you will suffer. And what I've learned is it's better to suffer alone than to suffer with fools or people you don't connect with.
Yeah.
But if you're with the right people, you will suffer happily.
Yeah.
And that to me encapsulates the felt experience. That's why, again, I focus on elevate the level of conscious awareness, what you're feeling, as the thing that ties and binds you together. It's not as so intellectual, and it's exhausting, But as a CEO, you have to tell your story 100 fucking times, 1,000 fucking times. If you're interviewing, if you're pitching, if you're trying to sell a candidate, like it's just a skill you have to get good at, even if you don't like doing it, like me. But you're forced to do it, and doing so and drawing that out of someone else, just kind of watching how the exchange flows. And there's vulnerability in that or not. And that is a function of what makes us connected, but it's not vulnerability you're looking for. It's the connection and the rapport and how simple and easy it was. And I've never been able to achieve the amount of information from a conversation through any other technique. I can look at your fucking resume. I'm smart. I know what to ask about. Looks like some shit went down there. Tell me about that. Da, 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 da. But if you start a conversation like, what did you want to be when you grew up? And why, and who are you exposed to, or why did you choose that? What happened next? And where did you go to school? And what did you focus on? And why? Or not go to school? Why? Like, there's a lot of transitionary moments in the arc of a person's life that will tell you truly who they are, even if they don't know. And you demonstrate the same. And if they align with that, like, this is a person, you've got the substrate to build upon. Like, okay, yeah, what's the capacity for mastery? What do we need to, where they have a lot of side projects? Is this a career hobbyist who has their professional career, but likes to brew beer or likes to, build airplanes or, like, I always look for broad and deep outside of the job.
Yep.
As an indicator. And again, we're talking about that core kernel of an A team. This is a strategy you can apply straight up to 100 people, but it starts to break down in terms of the depth at scale. We're talking about hiring the first 10, 15, 20 people. This works really well. And we're really talking about those earliest stages here. Because as an entrepreneur starting out, that's the hardest part. How do you build something from nothing? You start with people, then you get money. And sometimes it's your own money, which then gets you product.
Yep.
Right. You pay yourself basically, or you suffer in a garage or something, but it starts always with people.
And then when you go through that path, like what are the next steps after this recruiting piece, building that team? When you think through what are the qualities or areas that great entrepreneurs should be focused on? Like okay, great. You've now built some of that team, you've raised a little bit of money. Now what? How do you focus the right way? And what do the greats do when it comes to focus, where they're focusing?
I don't know what the greats do because I don't consider myself one of them, but I can tell you what I do.
That is what we're here to talk about. We still need to go through your history at some point. I mean, you've done 6 companies, so you've seen a lot.
I've seen a lot,
and you've worked with probably some greats out there, if nothing else. Even if you're being humble and don't consider yourself one of them yet.
Lifelong learner. It's different every time. You can bring along with you the knowledge that you learn and the experiences, and it will help. But there's always a new set of challenges and a new set of problems, and the market changes and the world changes and culture changes and values change and technologies change. And like the whole thing is about adaptation. It's about adaptability. So yeah, what do I look for after culture and capacity? And, obviously skills, like if you need a job done, the job needs to be done. At the earlier stages, I look for the ability to do more than one job.
Sorry, not about, not about the team members specifically. What are things you as an entrepreneur, as a leader and CEO, what are you focused on? Is it like product next? And then how do you do the product piece correctly? And what does that look like? What are the processes that you set up? How do you build that? Or is it go to market? What are the pieces you look at on that front to try to get that going? What are the elements that are critical? Okay, if you've theoretically taken care of somewhat the team in cultural aspects, what are the other elements you then focus on?
It really has to do with the kind of business you're building. So I'll give you some examples. There are people who build what had traditionally been called middle-class, small to medium-sized businesses. Maybe they're lifestyle businesses, maybe their ambition is to be something more, but it's not a venture-backed, it's got to grow 30% year over year type of thing. If you're selling a service, it looks different than if you're selling a physical product, it looks different than if you're selling a piece of software. So it really varies widely in terms of what's the next most important thing. For me, well, before I talk about me, I'll just say one more thing. There's so many different kinds. I've used the term CEOs because entrepreneurs tend to be the leaders. There's so many different kinds. There's product-oriented ones. There's business-oriented ones. There's sales-oriented ones. There's technically oriented ones. I'm a product and technical guy who has adapted skill sets into the other areas out of necessity. But who you are really dictates your initial frame. And sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. So for a lot of things that I do, I'm usually swinging for the fences. It's not to say that if you spot, some vertical, some niche in a vertical, and you approach the problem very algorithmically, it's not to say that's wrong. That might be right for that particular circumstance. And there's lots of examples. Certainly if you go to startup school, which they didn't have when I started doing this, they'll teach you like start with the problem and work your way backwards. Like, okay, this is the problem people lay awake at night wondering how to solve. That's where they'll pay for it. Like, what will they pay? A lot of people kind of break it down backwards in the algorithmic way, and that's a kind of entrepreneur. They're not wrong and they're great. Doesn't really work when you're trying to change the world, because by definition, like it is a different view to trying to impact the world in a big way versus build a business around a particular problem set and solution set. So there's no wrong or right answer. It's just circumstantial about what you're trying to do. And then what is the next thing? For me, the first 2 stages of startup are prove the tech will work, prove people will use it, prove people will pay for it. That's pretty universal in software development, but we're independent of what kind of business, whether it's a SaaS web service or it's a desktop piece of software. Prove the tech will work, prove people will use it, prove people pay for it. So I'll orient around, okay, we got to prove the tech will work. Who do we need to do that? Who wears multiple hats on that? And like, what do we think? We still have to be mindful that we're trying to build a business. I'll talk a little bit about how to think about that in a second. And we have a mind to be venture backed. So that means something else as well. It means we make a different set of choices than if you're just trying to build a business that was bootstrapped. But like, okay, heading in that direction, like we see an opportunity space, we see a problem space, we need to prove that things will work. I'll give you an example. CloudMark was a company I built with an amazing co-founder, Vipul Prakash, and we're both serial entrepreneurs at this point. And it was actually my first AI company. We built it in 2002. Before this AI we weren't allowed to call it AI back then.
Not big data at that point, not even machine learning, right?
It wasn't even big data. I don't even think it was big data. Like maybe big data was just starting to become a thing. It was cloud. It was people just starting to think about hosted server farms as cloud. It was the classic marketing rebranding of the same product, just with value-added infrastructure services. Anyway, we were building machine learning technology. That was sort of my piece. And Vipul's part was a collaborative filtering system with a trust and reputation system behind it. And the marriage of the two became the product offering. Today, I think filters 19% of the internet's email. Like, it's an incredible achievement.
I built a company sort of doing something similar, but did not have quite the outcomes you were doing, where we try to do collaborative consumption, sharing economy, all that stuff. Sort of how do you trust to transact? Yours was a more lucrative path, but very cool.
Well, so a lot of things to talk about there. Forget the reason why we went down that path as an example.
Product side.
So the problem was people hate spam. Okay, let's head in that direction. What did we have at the time? We had rule sets, we had IP-based filters, we had DNS-based filters, we had keyword filters, garbage, terrible, horrible. People were putting punctuation between letters. Humans still could read them, but the filters would not catch them. So we needed, something that was a little bit more amorphous. Now, I understood the problem, but I hadn't worked backwards to understand the size of the market or I just had an instinct that if we do something here and we do it in a completely different way, there's something valuable that we can mine. Instincts are not a trait you can teach people, but you can certainly get them over time. And in this case, we were just repeatedly lucky in our instincts over time. We saw spam was taking off. Bill Gates famously said spam would be solved in 2 years. One of the 2 times he was wrong, but that meant like this is happening. And so we went on that journey. And again, the company's still around today. One of the things I'm most proud of about this company, despite the technological stuff, is that a lot of the people I hired 15 years prior are still there.
Really?
It is what it is. These resumes were startup resumes, 3 years here, 2 years there, 3 years there, 3.5 years there. And then they get to CloudMark and they're still there. I'm so proud of that. We certainly had our series of problems and crises and things to solve, but it was all about adaptability as an organization and as groups and individuals and teams. And those people are still there today. And that was the first company where I tried to duplicate culture as one of the most important things. Got a lot wrong, got some things right, and here they all still are there. And it more from anti-spam to messaging security, malware detection, phishing, anti-phishing stuff, et cetera.
Yeah, of course, you build new products on top. But like, how did you, using them as an example, or maybe even going back further in time, like how did you keep coming up with the different products that you had? And maybe this is a decent segue into like talking briefly about like being an entrepreneur in the first place. So what is making you decide you want to crazy path of 6 startups?
I'll go back to, I said it earlier about different kinds of CEOs. There's different kinds of entrepreneurs. The algorithmic entrepreneur is, here's the problem, here's the size of the market, here's how that problem, here's where they live, here's how I reach them, here's how much it will cost to reach them, here's what I think they'll pay, here's their long-term value. Like, algorithms, right? And it's not wrong. And then there are people who have an instinct. And I'll tell you what my instinct was driven by: my own problems.
Hmm.
Napster was a problem we all had ourselves, that we were solving for ourselves. That company, I don't care what anyone writes, that thing came to life inside of the computer security underground as a bunch of hackers solving their own problem. There was no mind towards any disruption in the beginning.
We also we want to share cool music we found, basically.
With each other, not with the rest of the world. It was just for us. That's why there was no like lockdown on the system, and how it was able to proliferate so fast was because there was literally nothing to prevent anyone from using it, because we weren't thinking of it that way. For CloudMark, I hated spam, man. So I wrote my own shit and it worked. And then, slowly but surely, like, well, if it works for me, I'd pay for it if it worked. So let's test that out. Would someone else? Yep, they would pay for it too. Okay, cool. Where can I get more money? Companies. Would they pay for it? Yep, no, they pay for it too. So just down the line, for every company I've ever built, I've been solving a problem of my own. And I've either been fortunate or visionary or lucky or a mix of all those things to identify what was going to have value to someone else besides me.
But so, okay, so that's kind of how you come with these ideas to an extent. But you also then need to execute. Like, what do you think differentiates you? There's lots of people who have ideas. What makes you the one who's differentiating enough or executing properly to achieve to build a company and then actually achieve some level of exit? I mean, even Napster had some exits. I mean, that's probably its own set of interesting stories of what happened in Napster. But like,
If you're, again, it depends on the kind of business you're building, but we'll use my business as an example. I'll go back and repeat what I said earlier. It's not you, it's your team. And so the fundamental skill set that drives the success of the business is your ability to identify the needs in the org and identify possible fits, and then to sell them and to incent them and to keep them and encourage them and inspire them. It's a people thing. That's how I was successful every single time. It was about those, the core kernel of an A team that I built in every single circumstance that was able, then you then build teams around them and they elevate and remain. And like the whole thing got, and then what is culture and how does it perpetuate, and what's good versus bad in terms of culture and all that stuff. It ultimately was people, which is why I'll say, like, Elon Musk clearly brought together lots of really talented people who then executed on these visions and these business ideas. And if you're an entrepreneur like me, you write code or you build product yourself. So you're doing it alongside these people, but it's never a one-person show. Ever. Ever. So the number one skill is your ability to recruit, to sell. Because if you frame it as selling, then you're including investment as well.
but you need to then, once you recruit, build a team, you still need to point them in the right direction, set metrics or goals for them to achieve, because it's still your vision that they are making a reality. So what are those things that you do to be like, hey, like, here's the plan, here's what the goals we need to achieve. Let's achieve and set those in a way that are reasonable, but also aggressive to make something great that has not existed before.
Yeah, I think, look, you kind of answered your own question. Like, what do you do? That's what you do. Because I've built so many different things that are so different, and I've had the privilege of working with other people on their stuff and mentoring people on their stuff. I don't love the algorithmic life because I'm passionate about what I build and I'm passionate about its value. I use the algorithmic stuff to validate that I'm doing the right thing, but I don't start there. I start with my passion and what I'm inspired by and what I think will have impact because I see the value in it. And then I'll use the algorithmic stuff to validate that. I think from a team standpoint, in the earliest days, you're hiring people who have capable of multiple hats. You're thinking about what the needs of the org are. I famously had a mentor who, well, famous to me at least, he taught me a really valuable lesson as a CEO. He's like, every quarter, we called it the matrix of needs. Build a matrix. The rows are high level things the org needs, and the columns are employee, executive, contractor, advisor, and there were a couple more options. And the point was to prove to you that you didn't always have to hire to get the needs of the organization met. You could get it in other places. And then the exercise was to keep your vision high as to what are the high level things that we need to achieve and the problems that need to be solved. And where can I get that solved? So the algorithmic stuff does matter, both in terms of thinking about, the short, long-term things that have to be achieved. And I go back to that staging of prove tech will work, prove people use it, prove people will pay for it. I find those to have been very helpful gates. because you could start thinking about paying at the very beginning. And I'm sure there's a set of investors who tell you that's the ideal way to do it, is start with the buyer and work your way backwards to the product. It's not wrong. There are other ways to do it. But if you have something sort of solved up front, prove your AI. That's why I told the CloudMark story. Prove the tech will work first before you start having conversations with customers, before you start envisioning what the business is possible, its potential, what its TAM and SAM and yada yada is. Prove it work. Prove people fucking use it.
Yeah.
You earn the right to talk about what it's worth, and you can build a product people like.
Too many founders nowadays view fundraising as this sort of metric and goal, and it's like that you were successful because you convinced some VCs to give you money, and it's so far from the truth. But it is such a mistake. I've known too many people who like, oh man, I've two smart guys go raise some money, and like, man, I just raised all this money, boom, boom, boom. Like, and now we need to go build a product. I'm like, why would you go do why? Like, I get it. You have a good enough resume that someone's going to give you a few $1 million, but you're setting yourself up for failure.
Not only that, but I'll tell you something that I learned from that CEO that we ended up parting ways with, because I learned so much from this guy. I still respect him. Be careful what you raise, because you got to pay it all back.
Yep.
The real, like when I tell people and I introduce myself and I say I've raised 85 million across my career, I will clarify for certain audiences, and that's not a lot. And that is a point of pride for me.
Yeah.
These outcomes without a lot of money raised. Like, I don't care. You raise 300, 500. There was one entrepreneur who was talking to my wife and was bragging like, oh, raising money was easy. And they got a $400 million term sheet there. And I'm like, I'm never going to be your friend, because first of all, that's it. I know you didn't raise that money. Someone else did, because it's never fucking easy ever. But number two, like you got to pay that money back, man. Like the money is not the achievement. The team, the product people love, the willingness to pay, the scalable business you built around that, those are the meaningful achievements. I think usually in that order. I teach this to people, both as a point of truth and as a sales technique. Walk in the room 100% of the time. Great to meet you. I'm not here to ask you for money. I just want to build a relationship. And if we like each other, we'll figure out how to work together. But otherwise, I'm just going to tell you about what I'm up to, and let's have a conversation about it. But I'm not here to ask you for money. Even when you're there to ask for money, say that, because it changes the entire conversation and makes it a lot more comfortable.
I agree. I would just add on top, I think another big one is you can ask for advice a lot, and people are really happy to give you advice and give you time to help out, because people do, at least in the tech ecosystem, want to give back and help people push themselves forward. And so you can get in that conversation and be like, oh, you had a great conversation. Somebody might even say, man, well, you're doing, actually, this is my sort of, I've invested now in 150 plus startups, and I have a privilege of doing that. But a lot of the investments that I made have been because we have a great conversation as an entrepreneur to entrepreneur, not a fundraising conversation. And you're like, oh, you are so passionate about this and you get this so deeply. And you told me the problems that you have, right? You were vulnerable, right? You were like, man, this is really tough. I haven't figured this out yet. Or this is what I've done to really go deep here. And it wasn't a pitch. And like, that to me is what's compelling, not the nice pitch deck.
At the earliest stages, it's people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
And on all sides of the equation, it's people. Because at the earliest stage, you're betting on a team. You're betting on people. You're betting on an idea that may or may not come to fruition, but you're betting on the fact that these people, if they haven't figured it out yet, they will. It's always people, man.
So speaking of the people side, right?
Yeah.
Think about yourself individually. What has changed, right? So you've been at this, since early 2000s, even before 2000s? 99. So you've seen a ton of stuff.
I've seen busts. I've seen booms.
We should save some time to talk at the end. Is like, what is this, an AI bust or an AI boom that we're in right now? Since you're in that space and in the
very strong perspective on that. Yeah,
I know you do. But how is over the past 24 years, 25 years, how has your leadership style changed? What have you changed about yourself? I'm sure maturing, but what is it, if anything, about how you are a leader and CEO and colleague, frankly?
I'm gonna get a little hippy dippy here,
please,
because it's the root of it, actually. Because I'm an incredibly concrete, anchored, like rooted dude, and I was raised in typical Southern male culture and then East Coast male culture, so you can draw all the right assumptions about that. In my 30s, I ended up with a partner who was the exact opposite of that spectrum, and was interested in doing some personal development work and group therapy and a whole slew of things. And I love to learn new things. I have a huge capacity for mastery, and I have a desperate hunger to learn and see new things. And so I fuck right, let's go on this journey. Like, let's go find out. It all turned into like a 7-year journey between individual therapy and I think the organization I would credit for the greatest growth in me was an organization called HI, or the Human Awareness Institute, hi.org.
Okay.
Incredible. You look at it and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, I'm an entrepreneur and I don't have time for this stuff. And people will go for the landmark stuff instead, or they'll do, some other sort of, quasi professional program. I went all in on the personal side. And here's what I'll say. The very first thing you learn, and it's a thing you have to learn because nobody has this practically, is to truly love yourself. And it doesn't get more hippy dippy than that. And it doesn't get more true. It doesn't get more true. Your ability to accept yourself, to have a conversation with yourself, to forgive yourself, to better yourself translates to your ability to do that for anyone else.
Yep.
It starts with you. How calm are you under pressure comes from your ability to understand yourself and to recognize your strengths and weaknesses, and to take the right things around you, to use the right tools to de-stress, to use the right circumstances, the right people to share the load. It all revolved around this personal development work I did in my 30s. So the biggest transition I went through was in my 30s. And it was all, individual group therapy, but this high thing was like the most fucking transformative thing I'd ever done in my life, and to tell everybody about it. It's super hippy dippy. Not a lot of people will do it, but it's amazing. I think it's better than Landmark.
Do you think a lot of founders should do something like that? I mean, so many people come in as
This is the shittiest experience. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. I really try to talk them out. I thought this is the worst job. Shit flows downhill at the VP level and lower. Everything else flows uphill.
Yep.
Right? And it lands on you and you don't have anyone else. It's your fucking job. I remember I had an executive coach a decade ago, and she was amazing. But I remember, I was trying to build a satellite office down in San Francisco. I was up here in Seattle. And I was out back of this office that we had gotten and, just dealing with problems and getting advice and things like that. And I started to complain like, hey, God, like, why are my staff making these mistakes? Why do they keep bringing me problems? And she's like, Jordan, and it was a tough love. She's like, that's your fucking job. Like, you're the complaint department, and your job is to enable them to be successful and handle all the shit. That is the job. I think it's the worst fucking job. I try to talk everybody out of it.
So why do you do it? Why have you done it 6 times?
Here's the honest answer. I don't want to do it. Building something from nothing is one of the hardest things you can do. And this is only half a joke. It's a fucking shame. It's the only thing I'm good at. And what I tell people, and this is true, my current investors know this. Everybody around me knows this. I will do every job. Every job. I will clean the garbage. I will clean the fucking toilet. I will throw out the old food. I will run the forecast. I will, write out the strategy. I will write the code. I will set up the infrastructure. I'll do every fucking job until I find someone better. It's a great incentive for me to build a team.
Yep.
So I don't have the ambition, and it's not actually a part of my identity to be CEO. I just end up with the job because it's really hard, especially in the earliest stages, you can't, to find a person who is more representative and better to build a company. But over time, I've grown my skill set. I've grown my capacity. I could certainly live as CEO for longer, but I'm not attached to it. It's a team sport and I just want to win. So I want to find the right people. And if that's another CEO, great. If that's a VP of business dev, great. If that's a COO, great. Don't care. Right? Whatever it takes to win, this is the vision, this is the mission, this is where the business is. We're heading in that direction, and we collectively come up with the plan together. So why do I keep doing this? It's like, look, at this point, 25 years into this nonsense, would I love to go park my ass at some big company, make $1.5 million a year, and spend more time with my kids? Yep, absolutely. 25 years? Are you kidding? No one puts in 25 years. This is insane. Like, I'm ready, but I'm also pretty unemployable. Like, what job do I apply for? It's just not possible.
You've ready like an IC AI engineer. I don't know.
Maybe, but then like I can run a P&L. I can raise money. I can hire a team. Like I'm capable of all these things. And you end up, putting someone off. Either they've got some ego that they need to prove they're smarter or whatever. Like, we don't need to talk about it, but it's like, I keep doing it because it's what I'm good at. It's what I'm best at. And I do enjoy the enjoyable moments. But as I get older, just like, man, there's a reason why there's no 40-year-old special forces people. But there's a lot of 20-year-olds and there's a fair amount of 30-year-olds, but there's no 40-year-olds.
That's partially because those are very physically demanding, whereas the jobs we're doing, we have the privilege of sitting here in our home offices or wherever you are and somewhere comfortable. And you can do this job for a long, long time. And frankly, I hope you should mutter at. I tell myself I'm getting better and better every day. I don't know if it's true.
The lies we tell ourselves, right? That's why that personal development work was so great, was like, you can have honest conversations with yourself. And everybody thinks they're honest with themselves. And it's not true. It's just not fucking true. There's some level to be unlocked there, and it unlocks so much when you do. No, we won't get shot. Hopefully we won't get shot. But I don't know about you, but like, it's a struggle to get in the gym, and I don't sleep well. And like the burden of carrying this pressure and stress, and like the other phrase I use to really drive it home to people who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs is, you are the sole person responsible for the success and failure of everything. That's the job. That costs. I'm not 50 yet. I got gray hair, man. It's like all over my face and in my hair. Some people like that, but like, I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding?
Yep.
Like, I started graying in my early 40s, and I'm like, because look, why does every president, regardless of how they start, end their terms with gray hair? Unless you're Donald Trump and you paint,
except for
Donald fucking Trito.
Yeah.
Like, why is that? It's because the stress and pressure of the job takes a huge toll psychologically, emotionally, and physically. It's psychosomatic. So, no, we're not in a jungle building a fucking hospital while we're being shot at, but it is brutal.
So I mean, just to go deeper a little bit on that for you individually, like, why not? I mean, you could, I don't know your personal finances, but like, you don't need to go do this, right? You probably, no matter almost how much you made, you could probably go live in a much lower cost of living place, take your family, go surfing every day, and chill, read, follow tweets all day long.
Yeah, I would never do that.
I know, but
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and you're not wrong. I actually had a swing at that. So I'd never taken time off ever until my last company. There's an amazing story around that, suitable for another time. But I got to the end of that road, and my company was taken and disintegrated. I lost my 10-year-long relationship. I lost my community along with all of that, and all I had left was my house. And thank fucking Christ, one of my other companies sold, Cloudmark. Nice infusion of cash. Well timed. Well fucking timed. So I didn't have to work, and I basically retired. And I spent the first 6 months digging myself out of this hugely deep depression, and it was the worst depression I've ever had in my life, and that was it. But I climbed out of it, and then I started to kind of open up again. I learned how to fly airplanes. I learned how to race sail. I started doing what I usually do, build hobbies and do all sorts of fun stuff. But I got bored. And so I never really stopped advising. So I just picked that up, and when you do a good job, they'll tell their entrepreneur friends, and they'll, hey, so-and-so said you're great. Will you talk to us? And sure, I'll fucking talk to you. I got plenty of time. I sleep really well now. It's amazing what not having a job will do for your sleep patterns. So I started advising a lot, and then, if you do a good enough job, they will always try to pull you in. Like, can we pay you to take this over? And you're like, no, thanks. I appreciate you. It's awesome. Very happy to keep helping you. But then, at one point, someone's like, can we pay you a lot of money? And it was a VC, actually. So I'd been advising a particular company, and another VC that knew me was thinking of making investment in them. And they said, we'll only make this investment if the entrepreneur commits to having you as their coach for the next 6 months, and that's a paid thing. I'm like, all right, fine, screw it. And then now you're a consultant, and now you're making money, you're going to work, and now all of a sudden you look at, what happened? What am I done? And then you go to you start mixing, you start talking to people, and in my case, I reconnected with Jacob Kolker, an amazing person and an awesome managing director over at Allen Institute for AI. He's like, what are you still passionate about? I'm like, oh God, here we go again. And so, built another company. Just like that. It's like, oh, I'm still passionate about this. Oh crap, I'm still passionate about this. It's unfinished business. Oh shit,
You're
gotta
again.
and you go right back in. You're like, god damn it. But now I got 2 kids, so I might make a different choice the next time around. We'll see.
Maybe, I mean, I think, the one thing that I found a lot of times is like, look, it comes down to where you want to invest your time and how you want to invest your time. And like, for me, at least, as also someone with 2 kids, I find that I'm changing my priorities. Really, kids are really important and family is really important, but it means like I have less time to work out. Maybe I have less time for friends and certainly less time for hobbies because I have 3 babies, two human babies and a company baby. And
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of time for anything else.
I use the metaphor of, my company as my wife, simply because, it does not suffer inattention well.
But yeah, well said. So what one thing too, love to know about like what if you think through like speaking of being vulnerable, what are the major what is 1 or 2 major errors or like mistakes you've made where you're like, oh my God, like I should never make those, or I will try to avoid them completely in the future.
Yeah, as a CEO, you practice the answers to these questions at certain periods of your career where you know you're gonna get asked and you've been thoughtful about it. I just haven't given the answer in a while, so I gotta give it a minute.
Give it a think.
So, yeah, give it a think because 'cause I've made so many. Um, there's strategic errors. I think my greatest errors are people errors.
Yeah,
I'm so team oriented that, of course, every failure is my responsibility, even if it's not my
100%.
fault. Um,
And those are so costly too. Like people don't actually realizing the costs when you have people failures, like the amount of effort and time to recruit someone and then to lose them and have to re-recruit someone new and the
yeah,
drain it takes in the team. So costly, which is a good reason to put a lot of time and energy and effort up front to get it right the first time. But
right. 3 and 6 months. I'm telling you, it sounds trite, but it's real. 3 months, great engineers, 6 months, great executives, 9 months to raise around finance. I learned that also from that CEO. I learned so much from this guy. It's so, it is what it is. Yeah. Um, I gave a talk at Web Summit a year and a half ago on a stage with 350 people for 10 minutes about the hardest thing to get right. The one time I got it wrong, just once, I swear, and what to do about it, what I did about it. And the hardest thing to get right is people, and this was a co-founder problem.
those can destroy companies.
Ooh, yeah, I did. I did. There are other factors, but you know, the overview of that was crowdsourcing company, 2009 economic downturn. People didn't have access to work. There was no gig economy back then. The best there was um, uh, crowdsourcing. Mechanical Turk is the most well-known one, and it is a paragon of mediocrity. Much so contradictory to everything AWS has. Mechanical Turk is just a piece of fucking garbage comparatively. What do you need to get anything done? You need workflow, you need skilled labor pools, and you need quality control. In the real world and online, 3 things Mechanical Turk doesn't have. So, instinct, we can build this thing, and Facebook at the time had just opened up the Chrome. And what I mean by that is they were encouraging people to put their apps inside of Facebook, to draw Facebook Chrome around it, and brilliant. There were 500 million people wasting 2 billion minutes a day on Facebook, clicking on pictures of cats and bitching about various different things, and they needed access to work. They were there because they weren't working. And so bringing the work to the worker was a really great idea. It tapped into a labor pool there. That is not a business. That is one half of a two-sided marketplace. What was the business? Thankfully, Google the next year um, came out with what they were so proud of, so proud. Typical engineering arrogance. They built this thing called Panda. It was a set of technological improvements to their Google search engines. Basically, back in the days of PageRank, um, there were these syndicated content people who would write something very popular, and then they would sell it to everybody to put on their websites. So their rank would increase. Yeah. And therefore their revenue would increase, or they drive traffic or whatever. And so Google's solution, engineering arrogance, was great. If anyone has the same content on their websites, we're going to derank them. It'll be a negative. You got unique content to be ranked. Well, who do we know has the same content on their websites legit? Every e-commerce platform on the planet. They're all selling the same products with the same product descriptions, and they immediately lost rank, and therefore they immediately lost revenue. And we didn't have the AI then that we have today. You needed people to rewrite that content. And so there was a really killer second year, 1.5 million, third year, 4.5 million. I can't remember which. Then we were projecting 10 in the fourth. That's a really good view. And that we ended up selling it and bailing. And why was that? And it ultimately boiled down to my business partner at the time, who was my co-founder, who had actually invested in Cloudmark. And we ended up having to fire 6 months later, approximately, because he was absolutely insufferable and intolerable. Basically, a good person in his soul, but what we would have called back then as Asperger's, and just lacking something there. But years later, we all grow, we all change. I've been doing the work on myself, and they're like, let me give him a second chance. We build this thing together. And the deal was he had to listen to me. I would be his eyes and ears for the things that he didn't understand. And we literally had this conversation. I'm like, I will fucking tell you when you're missing it. We will do it in private, never in front of anyone. I want to win. We'll do this as a team. I will be the piece of you that's missing. And it worked for the first 2 years. But then the pressure and the stress just started to build. We all handle it differently. And he wasn't handling it well in some ways. And, he had to raise money. It was on him to raise the money in that case. I wanted to build the tech team and product. He wanted to run the P&L. He was CEO. I was CTO. But we did it all together. But let me tell you what a shit job being CEO is. Especially when you got to raise money.
I've heard you say that all the time.
It's like not fun. It wasn't fun. Being told no, not being told anything, being given bullshit reasons for no, because they feel like they have to give you something for your time. I'd rather you give me nothing, so I don't get confused and have to work out what's real and what's not. It took a toll on him, and the pressure and stress of trying to drive a business forward, like setting revenue targets, and then just barely coming in at the targets, but having built a decent team to go execute on these things. We had I think it was the greatest engineering team I'd ever built was in that company, but he made that really, really hard. And so I ended up being this intermediary. Like, he would pace around the office in these very aggressive ways. When he'd stand over people when he realizing what that felt like just didn't fucking occur to him, and wouldn't take the feedback. He'd do it anyway. So it just created a really difficult environment, which incidentally, in some ways helped us build a great team. Adversity is where growth and evolution and strength come from.
Sure.
It was adversity we didn't need, but in this case, I had a very strong engineering team, and I have to say his behavior ultimately harmed it, but in some ways it helped it. I just have to be honest about that. But the thing I got wrong here, back to the original question, was there was a moment in the first experience I had with him at Cloudmark where we were in a room together. The CEO I had hired had taken a break, and me and my co-founder were the ones left in the room. And back then, like, he is so much more of a commanding leadership person now, but back then he was kind of like the spiritual guy in the room. He was if I was the CTO, he was the chief scientist. I think those were the actual titles. So I did a lot of the talking, and I was the original CEO. So like, I still had that. And this guy, who was looking at funding our Series A, said, Jordan, you're never gonna, I don't remember how he got here, but he said, Jordan, you're never gonna wonder how I make decisions. If they make me more money, I'm a yes. And if they don't, I'm a no. And in that moment, I categorized him as a money-grubbing, sadistic fuck. And those are the actual words I used to describe him after that meeting with my co-founder, Vipul. And, that was fucking harsh and not true. Not true. I was wrong. But that's the impression I got. And so later, when I came back 8 years later, and we go out for drinks to my favorite bar, and lived in San Francisco, and I lived out in the inner Richmond. So Fifth and Clement is a bar called the Bitter End.
Yeah.
One of the most amazing bars. I fucking love that bar. I miss it so hard. And so we meet there for drinks. The Bitter End. Total illusion to what was going to happen at the end.
I can imagine. Like, that's how I drink the bitter end. It means something more.
Yeah. And I get to talking with him, and I immediately realize not only has he changed, but I was wrong. He's an Asperger's kid, and they can look like that. They can look unemotional and detached and oriented on the wrong things, and almost in some cases anti-human. And I'm like, oh my God, those are my people. That's where I came from. I'm one of those that grew up, but I started out that way. And so I see that, and I'm like, oh fuck, I felt so guilty. I didn't evaluate him the way I evaluate everyone else. And I
So
mean, I didn't do the narrative arc. I wasn't specific about what I thought the role needed and what it wanted and what I thought his potential was for that. I wasn't clear and transparent with myself about what, the long-term implications of what his shortcomings were, because this is one of my people and I fucking misjudged you for almost a decade. And I feel really bad about that. And the world would be a lonely place without second chances.
100%.
So I gave him a second chance. And the biggest mistake, I lost 4 years of my life to something that should have had a much greater outcome than it did, because I teamed up with a guy, person, could be anybody, who didn't share my values, who wasn't a culture fit, who didn't believe in it. We shared some mindset and ethos similarities, like absolutely. Like one of my favorite phrases is "sooner is better, now is best." He would say, "Yeah, that's him too. Like, let's get it done. Let's not wait. Banish procrastination. All right, the clean hands make you wrong. Dirty them. Get them dirty. And like, if you haven't gotten them dirty, you know what the hell you're talking about." He would agree with that. So we had some things in common, but it wasn't the fuck yes. And I didn't listen to that. I overrode that. And that was the greatest mistake I ever made in my entire career.
Hmm.
Sure. And I would say it's a good model for other mistakes I've made as well.
Just not listening to your gut and following your process to some extent.
Yeah, that's right. That's
So
totally right.
two quick questions, and we're sort of quick with time. One, because I can't help but ask, because I know you're gonna have an interesting answer. AI boom bust cycle. Where are we? And then the last question will be, which I ask every single person I do this with. What is the single piece of advice you would give to every single entrepreneur for excellence? So think of that while you are answering boom or bust cycle. Where are we? Are we all screwed? AI is changing the world, or is it everyone's investments are going to zero because this is a bust before the real boom in the world changing part in the next few years?
False choice, neither of those things.
Fair. Tell me more.
We had built OpenAI stuff before ChatGPT came out, before people popularized it. We saw the future and the potential of the technology before a lot of people did. But we still had a hard time convincing people of what the future could entail. I don't know why. I say it to you now, and you're like, "That's fucking stupid. Like, why is that possible?" I'm like, no, we actually had a really hard time convincing people that this stuff could do what we were saying it could do. Then ChatGPT came out, and for all the reasons that might be competitive with what we do, they solved a really important problem for pretty much everybody else, which was showing that it could work. Like, it's showing its broad applicability, right? It wasn't until ChatGPT came out that people started doing real OpenAI integrations, because it just solves it in so many people's minds. So thank you, OpenAI, for doing that. Even though it created some other problem, like, no, you solved a really important problem, was convincing people that the tech could work. I could do this as we were saying. At that point, gangbusters. People, I look at the broader point of view, and like, ever since cloud and big data and data lakes and data warehouse, people are looking for the next big thing to write a check on. And so here comes crypto, biggest fucking scam in the world. And they're like, let's write checks. And oop, nope, there's no business there. Okay. And then Web3 comes along. Oh, let's write checks. And oop, there's definitely no business there. So like the market's just waiting. And then ChatGPT comes out and AI is proven it. Oh, let's all fucking write checks. And so like gangbusters, like I've never seen before. Anyone who built an OpenAI integration over a weekend got a check if they went and asked for it. Now, 6 months later, people are going, wow, you just spent $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. You're paying 250, 300, 350 a month to these fucking engineers who then they're working in a seed stage startup where you don't have any revenue and you're not even anywhere close to it. Like, what are you doing? And where's the business? Because all your users either didn't show up or they disappeared, because you basically built the same product as these other 10 people using the same stuff off the shelf. And you weren't thinking about it from an algorithmic standpoint of what's the problem being solved that people pay for. You were thinking about it, what's the potential future? Let me build it, and then we'll figure it out on the other side. A lot of investors got wooed because they've been waiting to write checks on the next big thing. And they're not wrong. It is the next big thing. But too many people wrote too many checks. And so now there's a lot of funds. I heard the latest number is like 50% of all funds started in 2020 or later won't survive this year. They will shut down and or return capital.
Yep.
because they took all these bets and they threw in all this money and they weren't doing it in a rigorous sort of pro forma.
Right? They weren't saying that, is this a real business problem that's being solved? It was more like, hey, I'm going to do a CRM with AI. And it's like, well, I'm going to give you a check. Like, what changed in this world? I mean, this is a fight I have with my partner on my fund all the time. Like, what is different today that has changed to make this a viable outcome? And it's a debate we have all the time because very few companies that I've come across actually meet that criteria. Now, but very few do in the end because it's really like, why is this different and what is compelling? And to your point, let's get about this is the same thing with Web3 and crypto and things like, well, we're gonna do X, the CRM on the blockchain. Well, why do I care about an immutable database? Like, why does that matter? Like, exactly. So it's those sorts of questions that come up all the time. So, okay, so everyone overinvested in the market.
People needed more money because in order to build a company quickly, to execute on the opportunity quickly, you overpay, just like Fang, right? And you end up with not much money left. And none of that even matters if you haven't been thoughtful about the actual business you're trying to build, right? So the next 6 months, which gets us within striking distances now, was everybody pulling back, going, "Ooh, wait a second." And there were really thoughtful people on the entrepreneurial side. Entrepreneurs were like, "Okay, let's get fucking thoughtful about this." Well, I think there's a business here, and I've done some customer discovery calls there, and so in a normal market, the entrepreneurs came back to the market with better formulated plans, and then some of them would have gotten funded. In the gangbuster market, of course, they would have all gotten funded. But in this flip side market where everybody's pulled back, even decent good ideas were struggling to raise money. And so, like, forget what they say about, we're not in a recession because consumer confidence after this. Okay, this year, more layoffs than in the first dot-com bust. It's official.
Is this your prediction or already thus far in Q1?
It's official. In the last 12 months, there have been more layoffs than in 2001 or 2.
Well, also the industry is a lot bigger, right? The tech industry is way bigger than it used to be too. So to be fair,
I love that you zeroed in on that. I love that. But it's still like the quantity of jobs and the proportion of them disappearing is significant. Okay. Investors are pulling back, waiting to see. There's tons of competitors still in the market. And they're like, we can't build conviction on who's going to win. We just got to wait and see. And interest money is expensive. It's not cheap anymore. The ZERP days are gone.
Yep.
Right. So like, are we in a recession? In some ways, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe, Alan Greenspan reached out of his fucking grave and slapped me in the face. That's not a recession. But like this is not good. Raising money is really hard right now.
Yeah.
Right. Unless you've got revenue. And even then you got revenue and you got a plan to multiply it. You got a good plan to multiply it. You're still going to have a bunch of wait and see years. So is there a bust cycle happening? The other thing that's different is two things. Two things are very different. The first is just the brain breaker that Microsoft is somehow the innovation leader.
Yeah, I know.
Like for 20 years, it was an easy shot to take. Like after Windows 2000, what did they do? What did they do that was really, truly innovative? Ooh, new ribbon. I don't think so. Like, can't take from them their business. They have fucking nailed enterprise and they own that space like nobody else, right? But like, they're not innovators. But now somehow they are. So that's weird and it's scary because if you're an innovator and you have $1 billion on the balance sheet, there's a lot you can do. You can try to buy OpenAI. You can steal CEOs, name Mustafa, from fucking other AI efforts that were poised to go intergalactic into the stratosphere. Like that's scary. Not up is down. So that's also a weird thing. And the other is the rate of change. I've been through pretty much all of it. And maybe the most rapid thing I ever experienced was how we went from 1,000 to 60 million in the span of 6 months at Napster. And 60 million users today, drop in a bucket. Facebook's got millions, billions. Instagram's got billions. Telegram, Signal, everybody's got billions, right? So it's not a comparable number. But back then, 60 million users, 2 million concurrent was the size of AOL, which was the largest online service in existence. We were that big in the span of 6 months. So I've seen it get crazy. This is crazier. The rate of innovation and change that is happening now is greater than anything I've seen in the last 25 years. So who's to say the market's doing some weird stuff? The typically slow competitors are now really fast. And under Satya's leadership, God bless him, they are taking serious ground very quickly. and are being a lot more thoughtful than I think Ballmer ever was. We're definitely, I think, in an economic recession of sorts. Other markets aren't doing as bad. AI is doing a lot worse from a fundraising standpoint right now than it ever had been before.
So then how do you keep up as a founder, given the rate and pace of change? AI founder or just regular founder, how do you keep up and surf this wave properly? Because if you don't surf the wave, it's going to crash on top of you and bury you.
I'm going to say something that might be a little counterintuitive.
Great.
I learned something again from that CEO. There will always be demons at the gate. There will always be people knocking at your door trying to beat it down, right? Competitors, things that you're not out in front of. And he said, you got to ignore all of that and just focus on what you're doing. Literally unsubscribe for the newsletters. Don't fucking read Twitter. Like, you've got to go in your box. And you can do that if you know what it is you're driving towards and you have a vision and you have conviction around that vision. You can't just do that in principle, right? If you're still hunting for certain things, you got to go outside the gates to hunt. But like, once you know what it is you're doing, and I have to tell my company all the time to do this now. Please stop pasting URLs into Slack. Please stop. Like, it is distracting. It's demoralizing. It's disheartening. And by the way, none of them are even fucking competing with us.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with what we're trying to do. And if it does, it still doesn't have anything to do with what we're trying to do, because we're still pretty differentiated in a bunch of different ways. And so the advice there is, like, once you get your vision and your plan together, you've got to switch all the other external shit off.
Yeah. Just ignore, essentially, like, blinders on, focus, and just go.
You've got enough problems here before you do that.
Yeah.
There's tons of problems here. You'll lose sleep over this. You'll go crazy over this.
Great advice. And actually, so maybe on that note, to close it out, what is maybe that is the single piece of advice? What is the single piece of advice, if you had to, like, boil it all down, that you would tell all other entrepreneurs to follow? Do X.
I'm desperate to give a tongue-in-cheek answer first.
Great.
Don't do it. It's the worst. You better love it or you're gonna hate it. It's not in the middle. It's an experience that lives at the edge of felt experience. It was amazing and wonderful and terrible and depressing and exhilarating and soul crushing. It does not live in the middle. You better love that, because if you don't, you are going to suffer terribly.
So I've actually, before you finish, then give you the more real answer, I have to give you quite a quick example. I had a VC who asked me, it's sort of like a gotcha question. And he's like, hey, do you love what you're doing? And I was like, how do I answer that? Like, I know you want me to say, yes, I fucking love every single day of it, but no, it is hard. I am stressed. It is tough every day, but there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. Like, I'm a conscious, logical, I hope, human being. And I made a decision to be an entrepreneur, knowing full well the challenges that go into it. So do I love it? No, but frankly, I don't know any job or anything in life should be loved every single day. Like, my relationship with my wife and my family is tough too. Like, but I'm glad I'm going on that journey with them, because I'm learning every day and it's making me better on a regular basis. But I love it all the time. It is hard work, and hard work is how I grow and change and at least fulfill my destiny as a person.
So I tell an analogy. I 1,000% agree with everything you just said. I think that was brilliant. I tell people from a startup metaphor standpoint that there's a great biological evolutionary analogy about startups that I learned when I built an incubator and had to spin out and create another startup. There's a whole another slew of interesting lessons from that. But the question was, could I build a great team while being funded by Bill Gates? Because we were funded by Bill Gates. It was basically unlimited money.
Amazing.
And I tried, and I built a really, really, really good team, but it was missing something. It wasn't great. It wasn't until we spun out and became a startup standing on our own, where the next dollar was not a given, that we truly started to make real hard decisions and real choices that had severe impacts and real gambles and bets. So I went into that thinking, can I build a great team without a fear of death? Turns out, in biological evolution, species that are not challenged for survival stagnate and die 100% of the time. Species that are challenged for survival do still sometimes die. But the ones that don't, those are the ones that evolve, adapt, and grow.
And find their niche, right, where they are really good.
One hopes. But the point is, only through adversity is there growth, and in no other model. So if growth and betterment and impact are important to you, going to a big company and sitting there twiddling your thumbs won't do it. You've got to test yourself. You've got to crash yourself across the crucible of building something from nothing. You'll learn who you are, you'll learn what you're capable of, and you'll learn how to be more. And it's only through that adverse experience that you grow.
So is that the advice? Go get that adverse experience?
Sure.
Okay.
There's so much to say, like, what would be like everything I've said up to now is also good advice. I think the last thing I would say is I cannot stress enough, and I say I can't stress enough because no one else seems to stress it enough. I've heard this question asked so many times, and no one ever seems to say what I'm saying, which is the quality of people is directly relatable to your success outcome. I don't mean in terms of their skills. I mean the quality of the team, the collective whole being greater than the sum of its parts. That is a great team, and great teams can figure anything out. Anything less than that, and they might take the next Facebook and fuck it up.
Yep.
That is the thing to get right, and it is the greatest thing I've gotten wrong in my career. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs who will really relate to that statement. Suboptimal, that hire, good, not great, terrible, obvious and self-evident. Something was in their way, and it created vibes and created problems and then mismatches, and you couldn't work while you couldn't read each other's mind, you couldn't anticipate each other's actions at the founder level and the co-founder level, all the way through to your leadership team and your core kernel of an execution team.
Yeah.
I will say one last thing I'll say, and I hope this gets included. This is AI2's Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence superpower. We have several superpowers, but identifying potential fits with each other. They don't use my methodology, but they arrive at this similar answers. I have never had a stronger founding team in my entire career than I have for this company. Dan Sintra and Saurabh Padia are the greatest. I want to build more companies with them, and I fucking hate this job. I still want to work with them. I still want to build more with them. And it's because of who they are and us together as a team that becomes a true statement.
Jordan, this was amazing. Thank you. I've learned a ton, and I'm taking every time I take notes on stuff I want to think about, do next, all that stuff. Where can people find you? Get in touch? How can they learn more about what you're building, your philosophies, your theories, you name it? Where can folks find you?
I've written about some of the stuff that I've talked about. You can find that on Medium. I'm on Medium. I have a bunch of things that I've written. And then there's a bunch of YouTube videos flying around. Just search for my name and you'll find me talking about some of this stuff as well. And that's where you find me.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate the time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Great to chat with you.